Hi everybody, today we're going to be taking our notes on the landforms that we can find on Earth. So we started our notes in class with our main title, which is landforms, the date, and our definition for landforms. And we set up our first subtitle, which was mountain. So you should have your first subtitle, mountain. And we're going to use subtitles are going to be all the different types of features, and then our bullet points are going to be our definitions. So mountain you should already have as a subtitle, and our definition is going to come up, and you can pause the video anytime if you need more time to write. So here's the definition of mountain. Mountains are tall and steep mounds of rock with wide bases. So let's look at our sample picture here. So we have a wide base, so you can see it takes up quite a bit of space on the bottom. And then as it goes up, the steepness is this, and then it usually ends in a point like so. So when we have one mountain in one place, that's called a mountain. When we have multiple mountains together, the name changes slightly. So this is going to move us to our next subtitle, mountain range, or you could say mountain chain. Either one would be appropriate. So new subtitle, mountain range or chain. Again, you can pause if you need to. And this is the definition. This is your bullet point. When there are several mountains in a row or a group. So if you just have one peak or pointed top, like we saw in our first picture, that's a mountain. But when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a whole bunch in a row, then that's a mountain range, or you could say a mountain chain. Our next feature also has to do with mountains, but it's the space between the mountains. So when we have multiple mountains in a row, the space between them is called a valley. New subtitle, valley. Valleys are lowlands that lie between mountain ranges, and they are V-shaped. So you have 2 bullet points here for this definition. Lowlands that lie between mountain ranges, and they are V-shaped. So you can see here's a mountain, and the V-shaped here in between. That's a valley. Our next feature is an island. An island is a smaller piece of land that is surrounded by water. So you can see in our sample picture, we have this kind of brownish green piece of land here, and then it's completely surrounded by the blue water. This is Cuba. This is our famous example here. So an island completely surrounded by water. Continuing on, our next feature is called a plateau. Plateau. Plateaus are landforms that have steep sides, kind of like a mountain, but then a flat top. Instead of being pointed at the top like a mountain, they are flat. So definition, plateaus are landforms that have steep sides and a flat top. And plateaus are usually very, very big. They go for miles and miles and miles. So what we're seeing is just the start of one here in these sample pictures. Our next feature is called a peninsula. A peninsula has water on 3 sides, and on the 4th side is attached to a larger piece of land. So in our sample picture here, we've got 3 circled peninsulas. So anywhere where you see a kind of thin, skinny piece of land sticking off something bigger on the 4th side with water on 1, 2, 3 sides, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the land is a peninsula. So this here is the Korean peninsula, and then there's a couple of smaller ones nearby. So anytime you see a skinny piece of land sticking off of a bigger piece of land, that's a peninsula. Our next feature is a basin. A basin is a little bit tricky because it can be hard to get a picture of a basin because they're such a large feature. But we'll start with our definition. A large bowl-shaped landform that helps drain water, usually found around large rivers in tropical areas. So pause to write that definition. So When we think of bowl-shaped, we're talking about high on the sides and low in the center. So when we're looking at the Amazon River Basin, the middle is low, but it takes hundreds of miles for the ground to come up and get a little bit higher on the sides. So that's why it's hard to show a picture, because these are huge landforms. The bowl shape happens over many, many miles. And their job is, usually in a place where it rains a lot, the water collects in the river that's in the middle of the basin, and then the the river carries the water out to some other body of water. So their job is to make sure that all the rain that falls in this area gets out of the area. And because it rains a lot in these areas, we also typically find rainforests inside basins. So we kind of have three features happening at the same time: the bowl-shaped land, the river, and the rainforests. So we're going to talk a lot more about basins and what they look like in class, in particular when we get to our Africa and Latin America units, because that's where two of the largest basins on Earth are. Our next feature is called plains. Now, don't get confused. The spelling here is Plain, so it's not like airplane. It's plains, the landform, which is a widespread area of flat land that is good for farming. So plains are flat, grassy areas. They might roll a little bit, like you could see here, you have a little bit of height, but for the most part, they are flat areas that are grassy. And because grass grows well, other things tend to grow well there as well. And so a lot of the plains around the world are where humans do their farming. They grow food. Plains. Our final feature is a desert. Desert. This is our last subtitle and our last definition. A desert is a dry region with little rainfall or vegetation. A dry region with little rainfall or vegetation. So deserts can happen two ways. So we're going to add these as our last bullet points here. One way is called an arid desert. The word arid means hot and dry. So a desert is always going to be dry, but some of them are hot deserts where the temperature gets very, very high, and that's what we would call an arid desert. The other kind of desert is called a polar desert. So it's still dry, but instead of those hot temperatures like you get in an arid desert like the Sahara Desert, over here you have very low temperatures, cold temperatures. So it doesn't snow or rain or ice a lot in a polar desert, but when it does, it kind of stays. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't melt because the temperatures are so cold. So it's dry but cold in a polar desert, like Antarctica would be a desert. And over here in an arid desert is dry but hot. So that is the end of our landforms notes. We are going to add 2 more landforms to our notes tomorrow in class. So make sure that you have everything up through desert and leave a little bit of space. Don't do your level 2 update yet because we are going to add 2 more to these notes tomorrow. So thanks for following along, and I'll see you in class for tomorrow's activity.